Welcome everybody to the Future of Work series by FutureSolve. Today we have an awesome guest, Thomas Abraham, which I had the pleasure of getting to know over the year and is an expert in technology trends. So Thomas, thank you for joining us. Thomas is the founder of HR to Tech, and he's also a successful investor in a few HR technology companies as well. Thomas, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andy. It's great to be here in a conversation with you. I really look forward to the next half hour.
Yeah, absolutely. So Thomas, we've been hearing a lot about different trends and changes that are happening with technology, mainly because the changing workforce and what's happening in the industry. So today we want to talk about HCM trends, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and how the market is positioning towards a lot of those changes. So what are your thoughts today about the workforce in general? Like what's being demanded and asked for, and how are technology companies responding?
Yeah, so thanks so much, Andy. I think that's a very pertinent point. And I thought, let me just take a couple of minutes to talk about some trends in the workplace itself, and some of the issues that are coming up in the workplace. Because that clearly has an impact in terms of how HCM technology will evolve as well. So first So clearly, we've had, if you really look at what Josh Bersin said, he said there are 4 phases to the pandemic in his reset playbook, which is react, respond, return, and transform. And we've had 100% move to work from home model in the initial 2 phases of react and respond, and now with a sort of a return phase coming in, physical offices have started to open. However, not all employees are coming in. In a lot of companies, it is an optional, really thing for employees. And in certain, and the laws vary from country to country as well. And there are several companies who have said that, look, we may have a scenario of a permanent work from home as well, right? I mean, publicly, a lot of large companies have actually announced it. So, however, given the benefits that employers and employees have experienced in this work from home, or even better known now as work from anywhere model, we are likely to now move into what is called a hybrid workplace model, right? And organizations would need to transform their practices, processes, policies to actually, focus on this particular aspect as far as employees are concerned. Now, this hybrid workplace model, however, has also challenged HCM players in a very big way, because they've been forced to, adapt, develop, and accelerate some of their capabilities. And we're not so sure how nimble they've been. And also the focus has actually shifted from the employer to the employee, right? And that's the other big shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the other picture. So I
feel the pandemic made the industry be aware of that and the human aspect of companies.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I really call this as an evolution of exponential HCM tech, which is really how nimble are you, how adaptable are you, how flexible are you. So I think that's one. There are a few other significant shifts as far as the workplace is concerned, but I think this is a very significant one, which has impacted HCM players in an extremely significant way. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And technology as a whole.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so just to add on a couple of points more, Andy, before we really jump into some of the trends, the other big area is this entire area of skilling, right? And, there's been so much of, AI and automation, which has been deployed, in this season, because, companies, needed to accelerate the automation as well. And in fact, I was looking at a study recently by Edelman, and they said that 49% of employees actually now believe that automation and reskilling are their biggest threats at work. And during the pandemic, we've seen a huge consumption of learning, and clearly that's a big challenge as well. So that's another very key component of learning and skilling, which is going to be impacting the way, HCM technologies will be evolving. I mean, will they work through partnerships?
Yeah, I read a similar
Yeah.
article as well, and it said in 2021, one of the largest focus areas of businesses is how to upskill their workforce to be ready for some of the automation has been put together.
Right.
So
That's right. Yeah.
Great.
So Andy, after hybrid workplace model, reskilling, the third area that I feel where there's a lot of impact and change that's happening is the entire area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's again become extremely important over the past 6 months to about a year, and that's become a CEO level topic right now. And a lot of countries have laws which actually mandate disclosure of gender pay ratios, CEO pay ratios, and so on and so forth. In fact, diversity hiring, reporting, tracking, and so on have become mainstream right now. In fact, I think you and I were judges at an event, last month, which was around, technology tools for diversity, right? And this is something which HCM platforms have never had anything traditionally, right? And we've seen a large number of startups in this space, right?
Yes.
So that's again a significant change, and significant
and many
impact,
of them, many of them are starting to be pushed in that direction, but don't have a lot to respond to today in those areas, which is driving a lot of startups and innovation that may eventually be part of those HCMs in the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think so. And I think that's a great opportunity for HCMs to actually, perhaps acquire or white label or partner with some of these companies, because building from scratch would be extremely difficult for them. The fourth point, really, in terms of some of the changes that one is seeing is that the fact that the alternative workforce now, comprising of contract, contingent, gig, is now becoming mainstream, right? More than 40% of the U.S. workforce is employed in an alternative arrangement, and also some other research has shown that millennials and Gen Z workers, now about 2/3 of them actually practice side hustles or gigs, which means that people are actually now doing, multiple jobs, right? Wherever they can find it, so the concept of one company, one job, perhaps, is sort of a thin line right now. And it's...
Yeah. And I remember we spoke about that in the last event, and I see that happening a lot. So, the definition of a single job may go away, and you become an expert in multiple jobs supporting multiple organizations, which is very possible these days.
That's right. So, and then interestingly, HCM platforms have always been at sea as far as managing the alternate workforce is concerned, and it's been largely a job of procurement people and companies. So I think here again is another area where there would be a lot of changes and challenges before HCM platforms to manage this, because this is going to become a very, very significant part of the corporate world. And finally, the fifth point is really about employee engagement and well-being, and I think that's a very critical thing as far as given the work from anywhere and the hybrid workplace model. So employee engagement platforms, active listening platforms, social recognition, well-being, all that is going to become mainstream. And these things, never really were core to HCM platforms. So I think that's going to challenge HCM platforms as well in a significant way. So these are 5 thoughts that I have around some of the trends on the workplace. There are many more, but I thought these 5 were perhaps, interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And Thomas, thank you for sharing that. Those are definitely crucial. And we feel like they're not just affecting HCM systems, but they're affecting technology and business as a whole. And they're definitely very large topics that we hear from CEOs and C-suite teams all over. So thank you for sharing that.
So I think, moving on to perhaps, some of the trends that we are seeing as far as HCM is concerned. I think clearly one trend, and we've seen a lot of that in 2020 as well, is the fact that HCM platforms largely were focusing on core HR, payroll, and so on and so forth. but we're going to see a lot of acquisitions happening, in 2021. And, many of the points that we've already discussed, point in that direction, where I think several niche point solutions will perhaps get acquired by HCM platforms. And that's one thing. Second thing is that I think there would be a lot of investment in HCM as well. I think a lot of VC funding we'll probably see in HCM because, that's really becoming very core. So I think, investors are keen that there are good platforms out there for addressing, every segment of the marketplace.
Yeah, I absolutely see that. And we actually did see that start in 2020 and 2019, where companies are starting to consolidate and focus. One big one that happened recently is obviously AltePro that merged with Kronos. So that was a huge consolidation to focus and deliver some of the strongest products available. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then in 2019, we saw, SAP acquiring Qualtrics, which was very, very significant. Yeah. And,
Absolutely.
So in 2020, we've seen, numerous, HCM players, I've got a few over here, just to give you a sense is Paylocity acquired a company called SamePage, which is an all-in-one team collaboration solution. Paycor acquired 7 Geese, which is a goal setting and performance management. And these are just some in the US, but they've been happening in Europe, in Asia, and in all parts of the world, because there are so many different HCM suites in different parts of the world and different point solutions as well in different parts of the world. So I think that's one major trend that we will see: increased acquisitions and increased investment in HCM as well from VCs. For sure.
Absolutely, yeah, I do see that as well. And what other points have you seen besides acquisitions that have been pushing HCMs to work with the various companies? Like I know we see acquisitions, but some of the drivers of acquisitions could be because customer demand is asking for either working alongside of other software platforms, and that's how they usually get to know the companies that they're acquiring. Have you seen some of those trends happen as far as the requirements of working alongside of other platforms as well?
Well, I think the first thing is that the customer needs are significant. With all these changes happening, so they are forced to deliver on some of those adjacent technologies. And I mean, there's no time to build. So the only way is either you acquire or you partner. So we will also see a lot of partnerships happening, lots of white label deals happening. And that's also great for the ecosystem, because if you're a startup and you've built a fairly decent proposition, and you can white label it to an HCM player who already has, let's say, 500 or 1,000 plus customers, I think that's a great way for from a go-to-market, even for the HR tech company, right?
Yeah, great strategy there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this concept of ecosystem is going to evolve. And I think people are going to be a lot more open. I mean, in the past, large players were very closed. They didn't want to collaborate. They felt, they could run everything. But all that will change, and all that has already started to change.
We're seeing a lot of companies, from FutureSolve's perspective, ask for a best of breed model, which is they want the best in each of the areas. So HCM has been really focused on their space. But there's also strong players that come into talent management and all the other pieces of that. So that's actually also driving that request.
No, absolutely. I totally agree. In fact, when I was at HR Tech in Vegas in 2019, when I went there personally, there were more than 500 HR Tech companies on display, and over 100 in talent acquisition alone, right?
Yeah.
So, and all of them are doing reasonably well. So the demand for niche vertical products and solutions will continue because they bring in depth, right? And enterprises and mid-market companies are looking for depth. They want depth, so they will always go for something which is very niche, which is driving a particular need, and then they will want that to be integrated with the HCM. And that really brings me to another point, that the other mega trend for HCM technology will be to have an open architecture. And given this concept of ecosystem, they will need to be open for integrating innovative apps with their core application.
Yeah,
Right.
I
And
feel
you
like
already
that
spoke. Yeah.
Salesforce model will now start moving into HCM and be more and
Yeah.
more viable there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then the other interesting thing here is the concept of HR tech integrating into work tech. That's another big shift which is happening right now.
Mm-hmm.
And, so work tech really is defined as HR tech, which we already know. And then there is the entire area around collaboration, given the fact that, you have a hybrid workplace model. And you have products like Teams and Slack and storage solutions and so on and so forth. And thirdly, a host of productivity software platforms like Salesforce and CRM tools and Trello and so on and so forth. So I think the convergence of these is going to be another very critical component. And I think and we're now talking about solutions and content and the flow of work as really the big thing. So given that as the background, it is not just the integration with HR tech tools, which HCM platforms will have to do, but they will also have to integrate with collaboration tools, productivity tools, because it's a very thin line. The line between HR tech and work tech is actually starting to disappear. So that's another big shift that we will see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I could see that as well. Yeah, that's a great point. Concepts like Zapier and some of those integration platforms may even be prominent in the HR tech space in the future, which we're seeing some trends there, but no large players in the market today.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on from here, the other trend we also see is of some of the big enterprise players getting into the HR tech space. For example, Microsoft, with LinkedIn and the Glint acquisition, and they have Dynamics for HR, Teams for HR. Facebook has Workplace. Now Salesforce has launched Trailhead Learning, and soon we will see more action from Google and IBM and Cisco and so on and so forth. So I think that's the other thing which is happening, that some of the big players who have nothing to do with HR are getting into the space. So it's really showing that work tech is the next frontier, really, and HR tech needs to figure out how it fits into the scheme of things as far as work tech is concerned. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be merged with work tech. I can see that. Yeah. Great points, Thomas. So far. Are you seeing anything on your end regards to the market that may be of a good opportunity for a small business to take advantage of? We're seeing a lot of large players that are moving into work tech, but if you were to think about the small HCM players or companies that are trying to play in this space, any specific areas that you think they should watch for and focus on in the meantime?
Yeah, I think so. Interestingly, Andy, you will find very little research available, published research available for the SMB space. Most of the big research in HR tech and HR and so on you see are all enterprise oriented. But there's a huge opportunity there. There's a huge market worldwide, actually, in the SMB space. And I think that will require a very different approach, because SMBs do not have they are not looking for too much depth in a lot of things, right? I mean, they need collaboration, they need talent acquisition, but they are not looking for a very sophisticated talent acquisition platform. And therein lies the opportunity for an HCM platform in the SMB space.
Yes.
Because the threat to them of a vertical solution will be far less.
Correct.
Right? If they can be smart, and if they can build some cool propositions as far as engagement is concerned, onboarding is concerned, and so on and so forth, I think they have a great play, because SMBs will not really look at that ecosystem kind of a play. They will be a little more modest in their investments. They would rather, take an HCM which does the core HR really well, payroll really well, and does a reasonably good job with some of the other components. So the opportunity there is massive, and I think that's huge. That's the first thing. The second thing I feel is that I think there is going to be a boom as far as mobile HCM is concerned, I think a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the new players who are going to operate in the SMB space are going to be launching, HCM platforms on the mobile first.
Mobile first
They're
strategies.
not
Yeah.
going to be, absolutely. They're not going to look at the traditional way of building a web app first and then doing an add-on as an afterthought as a mobile application. The first solution of theirs will be on the mobile, because you're looking at small businesses around the world. I'm talking about around the world, and if you look at many of the developing markets, you'll find that people can't afford laptops, right? And
Mm-hmm.
whereas mobile phones are available everywhere, right? And
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
good connectivity everywhere, and people have got used to using mobile phones. If you look at millennials today, I mean, they are using host of consumer apps on their mobile phone, so they would really want even business apps to be on the mobile phone. So I think there's a great opportunity there, and I think I'm already aware of some companies which have launched applications which are mobile only, and they're doing really well. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great insight. Yeah, I can definitely see that. It also will help a lot of companies that are, delivering those service models. Like we see logistics. If you're on the go or traveling or not in an office center, it will open up that market to support them a lot further. In the past, those HCM platforms would answer that just set up a computer or a station wherever they end up checking in. But we all know that if you have a workforce that's on the go, you need to position for that workforce to be able to access the technology more readily, because it's there to serve the employee. The employee is actually the ultimate customer of the HCM, not the buyer, which is the HR departments.
Yeah, no, absolutely correct. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, great point. And what other trends are you hearing when it comes to functionality? Because I know we talked a little bit about the market, but you wanted to focus today on also functionality. One would be mobile first, but what other areas are you seeing from a functionality perspective that are required of HCM platforms?
Yeah, so the other big shift is also towards data analytics and insights. This is something where today most HCM platforms, do a fairly decent job as far as dashboards are concerned, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I think if you look at let's look at the enterprise market for a moment. Now, if you look at most enterprises, and I've been speaking to a number of CHROs, and one of the biggest pain areas they have is they say that, look, hey, we've got 10 plus, point solutions in HR tech. And then we also have a big HCM that we have implemented. We've got so many multiple different dashboards, and we really are struggling with so much of data. There's an explosion of data, and it's all over the place, right? So I think the requirement will be for the HCM to be able to get in that data from all these integrate. We spoke about an open architecture, so you integrate all these HR tech platforms. You bring the data into your HCM, and then make sense of that. Because, for instance, what is the linkage of performance to engagement, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and what is the linkage of engagement to performance? It's a small example,
correct.
Right? So how do you correlate all these, right? You can correlate all these only if you bring in all this data into a central repository. And a lot of HCMs have actually struggled with it because for multiple reasons, because it's a very specialized area.
Correct.
It's not just about consolidating data. It's about analyzing it. It's about explaining things and defining action plans in simple English or in the simple local language, right? Because sometimes too much of data, I mean, we know that data is the next fuel, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, so it's extremely, absolutely very important, but it also comes with its own set of challenges. I mean, if you can't understand data, if you can't really analyze it, and you can't, predict trends, and you can't define action plans after looking at data, then it's really of limited value.
And you have to become an expert in the data set. So if you're looking at data that's not HCM specific, and you need to build, an analytics platform that could consume it, the HCM platforms need to become now experts in those other fields that they had not been before.
Yeah, and that's again, data is again a new frontier as far as HCM is concerned. And, I think companies which are able to crack the code on analytics and insights and prediction and action planning, are really going to, score big time. So I was speaking to a UK-based data analytics firm, Activate, and they were again talking about how they integrate into HCM platforms because they see that HCM platforms are struggling. So they've come in as a third-party add-on which pulls the data from the HCM and from the various other HR tech, and then makes sense of that.
Yes,
So I think there again we're going to see some acquisitions happening because many of the HR HCM platforms which really can't get their story right are going to go ahead and just buy off some of these companies. I think
agree.
that's the other piece again.
We at FutureSolve do have an artificial intelligence analytics platform that does similar, and its requirements are always, can we tie into 4 or 5 systems that we have data in? How can we consolidate it? So that's definitely a top of mind, and we hear that a lot on our side as well.
Right, that's right. And the final point really in terms of a trend, Andy, that I see is this entire thing around, how can I see some, trends, industry trends? If I'm a CHRO or CEO of a company, how do I get to see and how do I compare, my performance with certain industry standards or what's happening in the industry? And I think this is again an area where HCM platforms need to use aggregated data in a smart way without violating any privacy laws to be able to showcase what are some industry standards, industry benchmarks, and then how are you performing against that? I think that's going to be a huge insight. I mean, it's not just operational, but it's about, really helping you in your decision making and, and so on. So that's going to be huge value to, to sort of C-suite executives if that kind of data, can actually be delivered.
Absolutely. And that's usually powered by artificial intelligence on the back end, which is self-learning and improving the analytics as they feed more data, which is definitely a top of mind. We hear that as the future of work for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Thomas, thank you. I also wanted to take the last few minutes to also discuss the market. So today, I'm going to share a slide about the market and what vendors we have in the market. But there is a trend that's happening where in the past, HCM systems were always very focused on the large enterprise, which is usually companies above 4,000 employees. So we see a lot of very large players in that space that provide a whole ton of products that have acquired many companies to give a large array of opportunity and to also help the large enterprise manage that. But we also recently, over the last few years, have seen a whole boom of HCM platforms that, like you're mentioning, that are modern, have a new interface, mobile first, and they're addressing the small market because the small businesses require that, but also it's much easier to get into that because it doesn't require that much sophistication. And that has been a second trend that we've saw that have come from the HCM space. And at FutureSolve, we also see a third trend that's going to be happening is today there's not many vendors playing in the medium-sized companies, right? Any companies between 200 to 4,000, because they require some sophistication, but not as large of a sophistication as the large enterprise. And in the past, this specific market was not as attractive to these large players that were in the large enterprise. But as we see more and more players start addressing the other two pieces, it's only logical for more players to start appearing in the mid-market section, which is really what FutureSolve tries to help with, is advise and help organizations find technology that will help them from a mid-market perspective. Are you seeing the same thing on your side as well?
No, absolutely. And I think, you can draw a similar graph build a similar slide for different geographies because, there are so, and the big challenge, at the large enterprise level, they need to think global. For example, for them, global payroll is a crucial thing. Yes. Whereas, the SMBs, the challenge is different. They need to only look at local payroll, for instance.
Correct.
Right? But yes, I think the opportunity is huge in both mid-market and in the SMB space. And we're going to see a lot of, as I mentioned earlier, huge amount of VC investment for companies to build, a new generation HCM, very, very targeted for these segments, and keeping in mind the hybrid, workplace and all the other trends that we spoke of.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I wanted to thank you, Thomas, for joining us today, and I appreciate you being an advisor here with us through this. And one of the things I also wanted to mention is if you would like to be part of the future of work conversation, there are a few ways that you can engage through that. You can visit our website. We have a lot of awesome content and blogs that are shared regularly, including the recording of this session. And then we also have a Slack channel that you can join with a lot of advisors on the future of work trends that you can communicate with, including our community. So we have a community which Thomas is also part of to answer questions and trends that you might have. And then lastly, feel free to speak to an advisor. We have technology advisors and CHROs that could help with some of these answers and questions that you have. So we're here to really educate organizations and help them find answers to some of these areas. Thomas, thank you again for taking the time and really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll see you again on another session. We really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks so much, Andy. It was a pleasure, having this chat with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for joining, and we'll be in touch.